follow up with one of probably my favorite guests. We're back with Thomas Haun of Turner Mining Group. And we had so much to talk about when we were visiting in Las Vegas that this is now the follow-up discussion to finish that conversation. And if I know Thomas, we're likely to drift off into other areas as well. So I want to introduce Thomas again. Thank you so much. Welcome to the show.
Of course. Happy to be here, Jay. You know that.
I'm glad you are. Man, so it was a whirlwind would probably be the best way to describe Commercial UAV Expo.
Yes.
In so many great ways. There was literally just one question. I want to follow this one question up because we didn't get to it with you. And it's sort of around, like we asked about, so I'm trying to remember, like we kind of got the overall thoughts on like the expo and the industry, and we talked about a lot of cool things. And then we talked about like what sort of advice you would give someone sort of getting into this industry. And then this was sort of mixed into some of the conversation that we had, and we can answer it the way we were going down the pathway. And it's more along the lines of, what do you tell a curious public about this industry? Because there are so many different ways that people are going in this industry. There's so many things happening. It's fast. It's very fast moving. Nothing's really stopping. FAA supporting. There's so much really fantastic synergies happening right now. The public, I feel, unfortunately, is still being slightly left behind.
I would agree.
What do we need to do from your perspective to help pull the public into this discussion to help boost the industry to where we know it can be?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is we need to do things we haven't done already. So one of the things that people kind of fall into the trap of is, oh, this worked for this group of people, and so I'm just going to take that same thing and like pull it over to this other group of people. But there's actually a reason why it's working for this group of people and not this group of people, right? So I would say we likely need a refresh in kind of how we're going about doing that. We talked a little bit about normalization and just how it's not as accessible as some other things are, as phones are, for example, because everybody's holding a phone. So, okay, well, that makes it a lot more normalized. And so I think people can kind of make the leap. Some of this tech is actually really easy to use. And we don't see as much being done around just getting it in people's hands beyond kind of like the toy side of it, right? Which, and that's good. And there actually is good normalization that happens from that. But I think the tool side of it and getting that into people's hands kind of much more broadly would be one way of us, I'll say, doing more than what we have historically done. So that's an example, but I think the theme is we got to do other stuff. If we just keep thinking we can keep talking about delivering burritos and that's going to all of a sudden make everybody care about it, it's probably not.
I'm inclined to completely agree with you. There's a bit of a leap though. There's a bit of a leap that goes from, and I'm going to put right here today, Nicole sent me an ad from Costco that had the very top banner was drones, nothing but drones. I'm like, wow, that's the first time I've actually seen that, I think. Mm-hmm. So that helps, but that's still on the toy side, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think there are use cases that exist really in any industry. And there are ways to get that out of kind of like the R&D department or the piloting this technology department and start to socialize and associate it with the rest of if it's a large firm, or an industry. I think another way of saying it, so we're at the Commercial UAV Expo. If you think about the folks who attend the Commercial UAV Expo, they primarily fall into two camps. They're either a technologist in some way, shape, or form. They work in the industry. They're focused on a product, etc. Or they are the people that pilot new technologies inside of an industry. Again, right people, but we have to make the shift from this early adopter group to this normalized kind of mass adoption style thing. And that's what I'm saying. Like the activities that need to be done are different. We don't need to prove the value anymore. The value's been proved by early adopters. Now we kind of need to prove, maybe if I were to say something, maybe the relevance. And that kind of shift in thinking is the way we get from a small group of technologists and early adopters are exposed to this and know how to talk about it to everybody knows how to talk about it, and we can kind of have it truly normalized.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit then. So, I mean, I've read Crossing the Chasm and all these other fun books about how you go from that early majority into, you bridge that gap. Here's one of the things that I think is interesting about this overall industry. There are way more people running out to Costco to buy drones to use them as toys than there are that are using them professionally. Like, it is 100 to 1, if not greater. I mean, absolutely. There's no way to dispute that. I mean, like, if you look at, and these are people that are using it recreationally. So there's an interesting thing happening right now where you have like the trust exam, and you have people that want to use them recreationally, but they, quite honestly, they take them out right out of the box. And even the ones that are really easy to use, and they'll take them out and they'll crash them.
Yes, they will.
Absolutely. 100%, almost all the time. Almost everyone I talk to, that is their first initial foray into anything drones because that's just what they do. So that is both an opportunity and a frustration. Like it's a frustration among the prosumers. So like there's a thing that I think if we can take, and this is just I'm just free flowing thought right now. Yeah. If we can take trust and actually have a real practical overview for those folks that want to be safe, besides just taking a test, that I think is an easy, super easy next step. And I think it's where some training providers are looking to go, but I see them being hesitant to take that step.
I think so. I think it's a good thing to call out. I would almost take a step before, and I use the word relevance, right? And the way I agree, Jason, we need to get the way you get people over the kind of, I'll say, hurdle is exactly what you're talking about, which is kind of a familiarity and, you know, a capability. But I think part of the reason that we struggle with that is people don't understand the relevance. This is stuck in an R&D department of an insurance company. Adjusters aren't just trying it, right? Like I think there's this we need to get it out and make people understand the relevance to themselves professionally. Because again, on the toy side, I think a lot of people understand the relevance. They're having fun with these things, right? And they're getting sold in a very large quantity. And they end up under Christmas trees or at birthday parties or whatever. Like, and that's great. It's the relevance into the professional context, and we need to think about large groups of professionals, not scientists, R&D folks. It's why I use the insurance company example. Like adjusters need to understand the relevance and need to, frankly, in some senses, kind of determine where and how they want to use it, not how the R&D department wants to use it. And I think that's when I talk about the relevance thing, it's even beyond getting them familiar, getting them comfortable, or it's even before, I guess is the way I would say it, getting them relevant or getting them comfortable or getting them capable. Like they need to understand why it's relevant before they're ever going to start to like care about being trained to be safe or effective or good with the technology.
I'm gonna so let's be clear though, that is not just about, because we've all heard it, 3 little letters that are pervasive anywhere where you're trying to demonstrate a use case. Show me the ROI. I don't even think we're talking about that yet.
No, I don't. And it's why I said relevance, because relevance may be, oh, this is now just making my job easier. Relevance may be, this is making my job more enjoyable. Relevance may be
make it safer.
Yeah, safer. I'm gonna I see a career here now that I didn't, I was just going to be an adjuster for a little bit because I got to slog through it, but hey, now I could kind of get into this tech and become like really good and proficient at it. Like it doesn't have to necessarily be, that's like the people who pilot and the corporate office folks and the R&D folks and those, they're the ones who keep banging on the ROI thing because they don't want to allow the technology to kind of seep out unless there is an ROI, right?
That's interesting.
The adjuster, yeah, are they thinking about ROI? Sure, but they're probably doing a different calculation, right? They're probably thinking about things that I said, make my life easier, make me more interested in my job, make it more enjoyable, all that kind of stuff. Like, that's why I talk about relevance rather than I'm talking about like capability or training or anything like that. I think relevance is the thing. And again, to go back to the toy side, there's a lot of people who like the airborne selfie, right? And that is the relevance of the toy. Right? Or the very far removed from you selfie, right? And that's the relevance of the toy. Is there like a real ROI to that versus like sticking your hand out or a selfie stick or something? I don't know. But it's the thing that's resonating with them. It's the thing that's making them feel compelled to purchase the tech and frankly incorporate the tech, because then you got to bring it with you and there's a cost to it. Whereas I don't think we have that on the professional side in this broadly relevant way. And again, we talked about it from a normalization perspective, but I even think before the training and before the capability assessment, it's like, hey, why should I care about this?
You know, it's funny because sales folks will couch that as a pain point. I'm thinking that's not exactly true. These aren't pain points. These are what makes it relevant. And that's a very different way to paint it. So I like this. Let's dive deeper. I like this.
Go ahead.
So, no, go ahead.
No. I want to answer the next question.
Okay. So the next question is, where do we start? Like, so where do we start to transition from the prosumer to professional? How do we make that relevance jump for very niche industries with hyper evolving technology in a complex regulatory space. I mean, don't even talk about that. That's not even
Sure.
That's not relevant to the relevance. We're way before.
Yeah, I think, and this is why I mentioned the audiences that are at Commercial UAV. Those folks don't do a good job of addressing what we're talking about. They want to stay on the cutting edge of tech if they're technologists, right? And so they're always going to be moving on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And that further leaves behind this kind of mass market, right? Because they're constantly staying 2, 3, 5, 10 years ahead of mass market. So again, back to my kind of initial comment, I think we need to do some things differently. We got to get this stuff out of technologists, right? That is the first thing we need to do inside of whatever firm. And by the way, these firms can be big, small, it doesn't really matter. Like the industry, we got to get it out of technologists. So that's one. Two, I think the other challenge, again, with the audience at shows like Commercial UAV, is the companies focus so much on impressing the technologists with the next spec, the next ROI, the next feature, the next whatever. Again, let's go back to the toy side. It's not that DJI or Parrot or whoever said, take awesome selfies with this technology. People started taking awesome selfies with the technology. It was in their hands and they started to play with it. And through that play, they figured out what they liked. And again, from a used to be an employee in the industry, you don't really like to let people play because you're trying to drive a value proposition and you're trying to justify an existence and all that. And then the people you're talking to, the people whose door is open to you, is the technologist. And they keep wanting to stay ahead and on the next thing and on the next thing. And it's like people who now have like iPhone 6s, right? It's quote unquote outdated, but you know what? For a lot of people, that's perfectly good. And the allowing, I'll say, the ease of the technology and the ability to experiment with the technology in an adjuster's hand rather than in, the R&D team of an insurance company's hand. Like it's that kind of stuff. And so then you're like, okay, Thomas, why do you keep banging on the getting it in these people's hands drum? This stuff is so cheap. You should just do it. Companies don't bat an eye at spending $500 on a given employee for whatever reason. It could be software licenses like Microsoft Office. It could be an attaboy, go have a night on the town, you killed it for us. It could be a professional development thing like, hey, we're gonna send you this class and blah, blah, blah. Like, and the price point of the basic stuff that we're talking about for this is like $500.
Yeah.
So we just gotta get and again, there's rules and there's regulations and you do things responsibly and all this stuff. But by the way, there's rules and regulations with every other example that I just talked about. Yeah. And so we need to shift into this kind of discussion about, hey, we're going to get it in people's hands. We're going to get them to tell us how it's relevant. We're going to get them to enjoy it and want it. And then we can move into all the things you're talking about, training them up, making them more safe, making them more responsible, making them more efficient, making them more business, right? It's like, we got to get them first to just have it. It is such a cheap price point from an entry-level perspective. The companies are spending this money in other ways, and frankly, probably wasting this money in other ways, that this would be an easy thing that if they want to understand where they can truly get value out of the tech and make it relevant for their workforce, start putting it in their hands. And again, you don't have to do everybody, but start somewhere.
Sure, like a little tiger team. It's interesting, that relevant but different story along the same lines is, in this conversation I literally had yesterday, community colleges or universities and community colleges now working with the FAA, the Collegiate Training Initiative, right? I'm speaking to one here in Northern Colorado, and they are working with companies around in the Front Range to take their surplus or broken stuff, because everyone's got it, and they are giving it to the students. And they're letting the students just go crazy with it. Look,
yes,
great. The ESC motor, this is broken. They go to Amazon, they buy the new part, they throw it in, and now they have an operational tool. And maybe they Frankenstein together something that no one even thought about. So it's stuff like that. It's along the same lines. It's letting them play, but it's also doing it with focused, STEM curriculum, and this is what it's all about. It's all about 100%. Letting them play, letting them discover. And I think there's lessons that can be learned by this industry on how to make it relevant by taking hints from how people are developing STEM curriculum for students today, and all the way down like middle school, elementary school. How do you make it relevant? How do you get them to do things with it? You got to give them some basics. You have to. Otherwise, they don't know anything that they're trying to do. You just give them a thing, and they're like, yeah, cool thing. And there's value just in that I found. Just having the cool thing gets them to think about cool things. Cool. Yep. Give them a cool thing that can actually do something. That's it's not broken or something they can fix. Cool. Now you got to teach them some things, how to solder, how to do this, what this does. You got to dive more into it. It gives an opportunity to dive further in. And obviously those different groups, right? From middle school students all the way through professional engineers that are trying to use this. The relevance curriculum or the relevance messaging is different. But it's the same.
It is.
But it's the same. Huh.
I love that you said that, and I love that you used and part of, and I have young kids, and STEM and how you get kids to play and allow them to start to connect dots on their own. That's why, again, and I'm picking on insurance companies, but this is true in a lot of firms. Like, if the majority of your workforce is adjusters, and they are the ones who are really driving your business, let them play. Like, because by the way, most of that field innovation to corporatize it is suggestions coming from them anyways with the tools that are already in their hands. Oh, I have a cell phone. I want to be able to take a picture like this and have it measure this thing. Great. There's value there. And then the R&D team and all these people start to do it. The problem is drones went straight into the R&D departments.
They did.
Like, and again, I'm as guilty of that as anybody. So that is not a, it's why I talk about the audience that's at the Commercial UAV Expo. It's my favorite show. I love that show.
Yeah.
But it's also showing how we need to do things differently. Like, the reason why it's irrelevant to large kind of mass market is because of what we've done. Okay, now let's look at what we've done and kind of turn that on its head. That may be the thing that makes it now relevant to that mass market. So that's the big push for me, is just we probably need to do things differently. And that's the industry's responsibility. It's also industry's responsibility. So the mining industry, in my instance, right? It's our responsibility too. That is why we need to keep unpacking it to get things towards the relevance, or get things to be relevant. And therefore, it will allow kind of all this professionalization that you're talking about. Because again, these are professionals. They want to do a better job. Frankly, they want to get promoted and paid more, right? So if there's a way that they can use a tool in order to be better at their job, they're gonna do it. So let's give them tools. And again, these are entry-level price point things. You're probably giving them a more expensive laptop. Probably.
Oh yeah.
So if you are, why aren't we pairing that with like an inexpensive drone? Like, it just, again, it's another tool. And yes, do they require training? Sure. They require training on the laptop too. Right. How many IT help desk departments are there? Like, I mean, come on, guys. Like, so, but again, there is this belief that there is a tool, and then if I equip with the tool, I will get value out of this individual having the tool because they will play with it. I don't know what they're going to do in Microsoft Excel, but I'm going to give them Microsoft Excel because I believe there's value in Microsoft Excel. Actually, it's been proven to me by Microsoft that there's value in Microsoft Excel. And so now I'm like, yeah, give everybody Microsoft Excel. That's an example of, we just need to do it. We just need to put it in their hands, and they will see the relevance and start creating the real value out of it.
100% agree. And there's the good news with this is there are dozens, hundreds, thousands potentially use cases that are completely unexplored that I think once you get the tool in their hands, and they're not the ologists, they're not the geeks like me. Like, these are the folks that don't understand remote sensing. They don't get GIS. They're not industry subject matter experts. They're just folks that want to play with a new tool, but they know their job. So let them figure out the way that they want to use it, instead of, honestly, our industry is very guilty of saying, this is, thou shalt use this way.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm as guilty of that as anyone.
Oh yeah, so I know. We're all pointing fingers. I'm pointing at you, but there's 4 back at me. So yeah, I get it.
And again, it's why I bring it up. It's not because I don't think the technology is ready. It's not because I don't think the regs are there. It's not because, like, there's all these things, and it's like, guys, this stuff is so cheap now. You should just equip with it, just like you're equipping with other things, and let them use it. And I bet value comes back out the other way, just like you trust that to be the case with Microsoft Excel.
Yeah. Interesting. Man, and I know we can dive super deep, and I appreciate this deeper dive into this particular topic. I want to thank you, of course, very much for your time, and I know how busy you are and how valuable your time is. So I appreciate that, and it's good to just catch up as always. So yeah, I want to sort of leave with the message that we do need to think about this industry in a different way. We do need to take it out of the technologist's hands and put it into the hands of those that are going to play with it, that are not technologists. And that's just the better way to do it. Every industry has seen success that way. So going back to the beginning of the conversation, we can take lessons in that.
Yes,
absolutely. So instead of focusing on like, okay, this needs to be done the way that the airline industry is formed, this needs to be the way the cell phone market is formed, or RFID technology, or point to any particular beachhead that they want to point at. No. we're going to have our own journey, our own path,
Yeah.
but we can take lessons on how to do individual pieces of that better than we're going to give them to the super geeks, and the super geeks shall rule the world, but the super geeks are also going to destroy the market.
Yep, exactly right. And we have to make the transition. And I think knowing that and kind of internalizing that will make a company that wants the technology act differently. And hopefully it helps the technology companies act differently, where they say, I'm not going to justify this super high-end use case. I'm going to say, hey, this $500, you're already equipping them with a laptop that costs more than that, and Microsoft Excel and does that, and you trust there's value there. Trust that there's value here. I think that's the switch that needs to happen.
I love it. I'm going to end on that message because that is critical, crucial, poignant. Boom. That's what we need to end it on. Awesome. Thomas.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. And we'll catch you all next time. Have a good one. Bye now.
See you guys.